So my name is Thomas Gesser. I'm a sport performance coach at Stanford University. I work with all of men's and women's cross-country track and field and women's squash as well. So I think that's one of the things that makes track and field great is that you have your pure energy system of power, right? You have your throwers, you have sprints, you have things that are happening really fast, really quick, and then you have the complete opposite of the spectrum, someone running 10K, right? A little bit different. So I look at it as like energy systems, and then obviously technique falls into place of that. But across the board, I think the thing that kind of connects everything is you have to have the capacity on a biomechanical and physiological level to be able to sustain whatever that is over an extended period of time. And I think that is power work going to benefit a distance athlete? Absolutely. They are for sure using some type of plyometric, reactive type of training that's going on, and it's going to definitely have an impact on how they perform in their sport, whether it is a 10K. And that same thing is going to have an effect on the throwers. I think the real thing that differs is kind of how much you fill up water in that bucket and at what time do you start filling that bucket up. I think a little bit of consistency throughout the year helps with that. I think you need to have a little bit of almost every single type of characteristic that you're looking for. But you're going to emphasize more for a different sport, or not sport, different event per se, track and field, than you are another one. And that's actually the part that makes it, I think, really, really fun. Those principles. I think how you structure it and how you play with it is, there's many different ways to do it. But in general, you're looking at the off season being your base level of work, whether that's coming from an aerobic standpoint, an anaerobic standpoint. That's your general preparation phase, if you will. And then you're going to move into some hypertrophy work as well. So we're working on building some mass, some lean mass, getting some more volume in with that as well. Some good hormone releases there too. And then from there, we may alter those a few times. It just depends on how long that off season is, right? So if I'm in the cross-country season, we're probably not going to spend an inordinate amount of time there, but we need to spend some time there, right? That needs to happen. Competition or performance measures that are really, really relatable to what it's going to look like in the season are not drastically important in the off-season, right? Because it's the off-season. So we need to take the time there to reach into that bucket and grab those, and then we'll get there down the road. For other ones who say you have a javelin thrower who just competes in outdoor season, that window for them in off season is a little bit longer. So we can spend a little bit more time in that general preparation phase, hypertrophy phase, and we can build those things up because we have more time. And then obviously from there, we go into kind of rotating strength phases. And that can come in multiple different ways. Eccentric, isometric, concentric, all of those types of muscle actions are the things that we're going to be incorporating and mixing up and shifting as we go throughout those strength phases. And we probably did a little bit of it in general, probably did a little bit of it in hypertrophy, but we're going to emphasize definitely some of those muscle actions as we move forward. And then basically now that we've built up this base, then we built up another layer on top of that, where now we have we have the capacity, we have the general abilities, now we have some more strength abilities that kind of fold on top of that. Now we can go, okay, cool, I'm strong enough, and I'm stable enough, and I'm safe enough to where now I can start producing force by moving things quickly, right? I'm strong enough to move things fast. Power is the athletic version of strength, and I think that's a great way to explain it. So that's kind of where we go. You got to have those kind of base principles. Now, how much strength do we need depends on the sport that we're looking at, depends on the event that we're looking at, and it depends on the demands of what those sports require. So we really want to make sure that the athlete is recovered and ready to go in the latter half of the week. So what it would look like is we compete on the weekend, maybe the week before. And so early in the week, we can go ahead and we can kind of do what our normal routine is, and we can kind of tax the system a little bit more. than we would towards the end of the week. And then as we progress towards the end of the week where the athlete needs to be recovered, feel a little bit better, we'll go ahead and we'll kind of back off some things. We'll keep more power, explosive movements in there, things that aren't going to tax the system as much, but get the nervous system fired up, ready to go. The CNS is ready to hit those things. And then that way we go into the competition, we're recovered, we're good to go. Now, there's a caveat to that. The dichotomy there is maybe early in the season, our focus isn't to do great at the first meet or the second meet or the third meet. Maybe our goal is to do really good at the end of the season, which is every track and field athletes and coaches goal. So maybe we're going to train through the first couple of meets. Maybe we're going to make it a little bit more, not as recovered. So then training may not look like it's going to lighten up towards the end of the week. It may just stay consistent. Yeah, well, one, we're thinking about, okay, can you recover? Yeah. Can you recover? If we're doing, and that also depends on the athlete and what event that they're doing. If we have a decathlete doing something, they've done an inordinate amount of work, and we really need to just make sure they recover and they hit on enough qualities to make them, regenerate and feel good going into the next week's worth of competition and training. And so we're going to be a little bit more reserved on volume and a little bit more reserved on intensity. If we're taking someone who maybe ran a 10K and it was a really hard 10K race, right? Maybe it was a little cold outside, maybe it was something that affected them a little bit, it was late at night, those types of things. They need time to recover. Maybe we need to drop volume, maybe we need to drop intensity. Maybe we need to, if it's a certain type of athlete, maybe we need to drop volume, but we need to take intensity up. We need to get things kind of peaking in that realm to go then that direction. But I think recovery is going to be, your first thing coming off of me, because that's going to be the highest amount of accumulated stress that's going to happen from a physiological, mental, mechanical. You're going to have all that stress going to be happening in competition. So essentially, there's a multifaceted way in which you can train. There's, like you said, you can go high volume, you can go low reps, you can go high intensity, you can go low reps. So I tend to look at it as, first of all, what's the athlete's biomechanical need and physiological need? What do they do to compete? What does that look like? How can we break that down? And then go, okay, so we need to match and in line, how do we get more specific towards that when we get into competition and we get closer to the meets that really matter and we get into where we're getting into the nitty gritty. So we need to make sure that we have capacities built up throughout the year that allow us to be really specific at that point in time. And then when we're further away from that, we can be more general and we can kind of go in the opposite of whatever that is. So beginning of the season, we're going to be having probably a little bit more time under tension, but the intensity is probably not going to be as high. And we're going to try to make sure that we basically are tapering that time under tension down throughout there, but we're making sure intensity stays high. So we're going to be kind of moving in that realm where the volume is a little bit less because now we're accumulating more volume while we're going through competitions. And then midway through the season, we're going to be maintaining strength levels. Our volume is going to be a little bit less. Intensity is going to be a little bit higher. So we're not going to be taxing the system from a tissue standpoint by doing a lot of high volume, but the nervous system is getting fired up there for sure. But we want to maintain those strength qualities. We want to make sure we have that capacity even in endurance type work. And then because we've built up and we've maintained those strength qualities, and we're going to constantly keep working through a little bit of power, explosiveness, and we're going to be adding those layers on midway through the season in conjunction with doing some of this high intensity work. So potentiation is what we call it. So that's kind of where we're going to start putting that stuff in. So that way when we take away the layer of high intensity work, the strength work, when we get towards the latter half of the season, the third part like you were talking about, we're going to be predominantly all power. And that's pretty much where we're going to be. And we'll have that base. And now that, because that intensity's come off, the nervous system's still going high intensity, but it's not from a load perspective, it's from a velocity perspective. And so we're going to have it there, and we'll be working on being explosive, being fast. And those things do actually impact endurance training as well, because we're on single leg, alternating back and forth. It's basically a small little plyometric every single time. So we need to make sure we have that quality as well. And we'll maintain that throughout the season, and then we'll get into a taper where we'll take that intensity through velocity, but volume's down. We'll just keep dropping the volume down. But I would like to think that it's headed in more of a working in conjunction with sports science, athletic training, physical therapy, sport coaches, and becoming kind of the liaison point between all of those different, intersections of sport, especially at the high level where you have, like here at Stanford, we have access to that. We could be in the high school level and we don't even have an athletic trainer. We have some local physical therapists that happen to show up at, a competition somewhere. So I think it's moving into where we're having a higher amount of those other support staff around a sport, being viable and present for lower levels of sport, not just at the top tier. And then I think the sports conditioning or strength and conditioning or sport performance or physical preparation coach, whatever you want to call it, I feel like that person becomes the liaison and has to have a good understanding of, okay, what does conditioning look like? What does sport practice look like? What does rehab look like? What does strength training look like? What does power look like? What do all of these things look like? And be the person that can kind of connect the dots and help create conversations and keep people together. I would hope it doesn't become just too scientific based, or it doesn't become, just too straight, subjective based either. I think it has to be a little bit of both, and I think that's the role of the sport performance strength and conditioning coach, to be the liaison and understanding all those components.